the field of Slavic studies, especially in the United States, is largely Russian studies. It has been so basically since the 1980s. It was a little bit different before. It was more diversified. But for some reason, since the 80s and especially in the 90s, it coalesced more and more precisely around Russian studies. And so that's the bulk of what is studied. It just so happened that we used to have more scholars of Polish culture, history, and so on, of Czech, Yugoslavian, and so on our campuses back in the 60s and 70s than we ended up having in the 80s, 90s, and then 2000s. And so the reality then is that these people reproduce the same kind of scholars that they are, for the most part. Not always, but mostly. And obviously, the question of exposure for me is the key here. If scholars, being bachelor student, masters, or PhDs, when they reach that stage, are never exposed to anything but Russian culture, and that's presented to them as these Slavic studies, then obviously they already entering the field with a very kind of narrow idea of, what is a major culture, so to speak, what is a minor culture, and so on. Ukrainians, Czechs, Poles are often relegated to, being this ultra-nationalists simply for wanting to study and teach their cultures, their languages and literatures. And so, but that's not the case that's not how the Russian culture is viewed. For some reason, Russian culture is viewed as this, more universal, kind of more all-embracing worldly culture and so on, which it isn't. It's just perceived that way. Every culture is deeply national. And so it's all about positioning and it's about exposure. And so I feel that what is really important is to get these scholars and students more broadly exposed to as much of other cultures and literatures and histories as we possibly can. And Ukrainian literature and culture obviously is one of them, but not the only one. But already that kind of just being exposed to this other context, I think, creates a lot of openness going forward. And people who have been exposed to other contexts, they are kind of, I feel already, kind of our natural allies. Whereas trying to convince someone who is, deep, who is a believer in the Russian imperial culture, or kind of supports this whole idea that Russia has the right to quote unquote collect its lands and so on, obviously it's already a lost cause.